Hey HCDA, and today I want to see if we can actually get rid of the dark fog for once and for all from our starting system. Last time, not only did I set up a very decent starting facility on the second planet in the system, I also cleared out the entire fog from both my home planet as well as the starting planet. So if we look at the map now, look, no more enemies here, and I'm hoping that will stay that way for a little while. If we look at the actual progression of the threat, it seems that the Dark Fog Hive is not really intending to attack us anytime soon. The 615 threat that's already here is, well, 0.2%. And it doesn't seem to be scaling up as long as I don't attack the enemy. So far, so good. Now, in order to actually progress through the game and take the fight to the enemy, we're going to need a lot more combat units and things like that. And in order to make those, we're actually going to have to automate the transportation between our planets. So let's do the things that we always do in this phase of the game. Before I do that, actually, there was a small comment I want to make, because I actually missed something that was pointed out in the comments to me by Res Instant, so thank you for that. The combustible unit that you can actually make very cheaply and fairly early on is something you can use as fuel. And it's actually super efficient. Not only does it get around 3.5 times as much fuel as normal coal does, you actually get an 80% bonus if you use it as fuel in your mech. So, long story short, carry this around rather than graphite or coal like I would normally do, and you don't have to worry about fuel for a very long time. Okay, so let's dump most of our inventory in a box for a moment and grab a whole bunch of titanium. Build a little facility making titanium crystals, dump in the titanium that I just brought, hook it up to the organic crystal, and then build an actual yellow research facility and hook that up to the titanium crystal as well as to the diamond that I already prepared before. And then we hook that up to the actual science facility and we start the research in titanium alloy as well as the ILS. Then let's grab some graphene as well as some acid and make our way back to the other planet. And once there, put the acid and the graphene into their respective boxes so we can start working on some alloy as well as some particle containers. Now, before you ask, yes, I know that it's more efficient to put the liquids into an actual liquid facility. It just doesn't fit with the aesthetics of the rest of my factory, and it doesn't really matter considering this is only going to be a single trip I do, so yeah, deal with it. And then expand our mall by building all the buildings that we need in order to make the drones, the ILSs, the PLSs, the vessels, and so on. Oh, by the way, did you know that you can actually build buildings now yourself just by left clicking on them? It's not something you want to do too much, but it's definitely something that's convenient once you want to speed things up if your drones aren't handling it. And especially in the early game, it's really convenient to do that. Okay, so we have the Interstellar Logistics Center unlocked. Let's make sure we actually set this building to produce that, because I was a little bit fast on building it. Where are you? There we go. And then you might need to babysit the resources a little bit, because the steel and processors and things like that are needed in multiple places. So make sure that you allocate them among these different facilities initially by hand, so you get a little bit of everything. Especially things like drones aren't really needed early on, so you could actually opt to just set this to 0 for a moment, just to make sure there's no production being wasted on things that you don't immediately need. Get back to your home planet and set the ILS up to supply the acid as well as the graphene, and request the titanium ingot, and make sure you hook it up to the required facilities. The titanium ingot should of course be going to your science production over here. While you're here, you might as well upgrade your science facilities a little bit, just to make sure you can actually process all the things that you're now producing. And then back on your second planet, set up an ILS that does the exact reverse thing, so request the acid and the graphene and supply the titanium, and then you can hook that up to the facility that we started out with over here, which is actually producing or requesting all of these. In this point of the game, take a look at where your resources are actually going and if they're actually reaching the places where they need to go. So for example, steel is something I encountered during this particular playthrough, was going to things like missile launchers and things like that I didn't actually need. So I actually decided to turn down the space in the depot for a moment, so that the steel is actually going to the places I do need it. Just an example. There's a little bit of manual guidance of your resources in this phase of the game that will resolve itself really quickly, but yeah, we need to just get to the automation part. And we also need to get to the part where we actually name planets after the members of the channel to say thank you. And there we go. Thank you Anubis Khan and Tony V for being long-time members, and M, William and Slackfox for recently joining the channel. Your support is very much welcome. Okay, so it's time to do a little bit of busy work. It's unavoidable at this stage of the game, so I'm just going to set up some PLSs, not ILSs, because we won't actually be transporting things off this planet for the foreseeable future, so you might as well take the cheaper version and just hook up some miners to that. Just make sure that you don't overdo it with the belts. You are still working with Mark 1 belts at this point, so just a couple of belts will do, and this will make sure you have plenty of resources coming in. And in order to actually utilize that ore, I'm gonna set up some of my expansion packs. So I'm gonna start out with a relatively small blueprint. It's not that small, but it's relatively small. And I want to show you the awesomeness that is the planetary base. So you can set these up, for example, at the sides like this, and then just hook them up with some power. I like using these power poles for that. Remember, you can actually build this stuff just by left-clicking on it. And there you go. They're actually constructing the base for us. We can do the same thing on this side. And of course hook it up to some power as well. And there we go. So I can actually leave this base now and it will continue to be built. With the exception of everything that's white, because that hasn't actually been put down for my inventory just yet. So I didn't have any ILSs on me. I need to go pick those up. But other than that, this entire base will be built automatically by the battlefield analysis bases. And there we go. It's just awesome that these things are now kind of building themselves, so you can just pick them back up afterwards. Now, of course, put in some drones so you can actually have the resources coming in. They're completely set up for proliferation already, so the blueprints are, of course, on DysonSphereBlueprints.com. I am actually not yet building these spray coders, so I'm gonna have to do that pretty soon. I actually forgot a couple of these base builders. There we go. And yeah, this is the small version that I'm definitely going to want to expand, so make sure you leave room on the sides when you do this, because we do actually have, and I'll actually show you that right now, we have a larger version that we'll be using shortly, that actually completely overlaps with this one, as you can see, and that you can just stamp over this one. You will need to remove some belts. I'll show you how to do that in a moment, but in order to get an idea of how big this actually is, there you go, this is how big it is, so that means you can actually kind of measure out how much room you need to leave on the sides. Okay, so let's repeat that process for another simple setup that makes all the other remaining types of ingots. And then a few more times to actually set up things like the processors, the turbines, and what else did I build? Oh, yeah, over here. A very simple build to make things like coils and circuit boards. Now all these blueprints are again on the side, so you just pick them up. They are identical to the ones that I used in my previous playthrough, with one exception, again, that I made them all proliferation already. Now, I recommend focusing on getting production going for things like the turbines and magnetic rings that you actually need for things like Mark III belts. Just getting those belts up and running as soon as possible is really nice, so yeah, you can actually upgrade all these facilities and make them work at their full capacity. And that will take a while, because you'll need things like drones, you'll need vessels, you need resources coming in, so you might as well just set this up while you go and conquer the rest of the universe. Now, I really like this little build that I have over here, which makes Mark 1 sorters, Mark 2 sorters, and Mark 3 sorters, but also has these boxes where you can just dump in any old sorters that you might have, or old belts that you might have. Just dump them in like this, and they will be recycled and made into the better and improved version. Now, you might want to hold off on dumping all your belts in here just yet, because, of course, it's going to take a little moment for these Mark 3 belts to be made, so in the meanwhile, might as well make use of the belts that you already have. I'm also using these giant distributors that I have over here. Just a PLS with 4 different resources that is set up with a whole of the boxes. What this does is actually it helps you transport the items from the places where you're making that might be far away. So, for example, I'm making the ingots for the silicon over here. And this might be out of range for a lot of the things that I'm making here. So the silicon might not actually be reaching, for example, this place over here. Now, I can solve that by simply putting a PLS down here with these boxes, and then all of these boxes will be able to redistribute the silica to wherever it needs to go. And of course, you can do the same thing for pretty much every other item that you might need to redistribute across your planet. I'm also really starting to like the design with these 4 boxes that can pretty much make any building that you need. So I, of course, set the spray coders to be built so we can actually start proliferating stuff. However, in order to proliferate stuff, we also need proliferators themselves. And well, you can make them from coal only if you're using the Mark II one. So what I'm doing over here is I'm bringing in some coal, making the Mark 1 over here, making some graphite, I should say, over here as well, then turning that graphite into diamonds, and then using those diamonds and the Mark 1 version to make the Mark 2 version. Then that's going on this belt over here. This belt is going through a proliferator, turning back, going through the other proliferators, then all the way back through all the other proliferators before it even goes into the building itself. Now the reason I'm doing this is because self-proliferation, starting from the Mark II proliferator, is actually efficient. So you end up with more proliferation because you're proliferating everything. That makes sense. And on the other side over here, I'm doing the exact same thing, just mirrored, of course. And that means I'm going to get a decent amount of Mark II proliferators being constructed over here. Now I've just copied this build a few more times, and you can basically keep going and go around the entire planet. I like making it really slim, like I've done over here, because it kind of fits into the areas of the planet where you normally might not be able to fit anything else. But this build easily fits into pretty much any zone on the planet. I think I just mentioned processor, but didn't actually show you the build, so here it is. As you can see, I actually do have Mark III belts now up and running, Mark III sorters as well. As you can see, the proliferation is not working just yet. That's mostly because I don't have enough coal coming in order to actually proliferate everything. So don't worry about that too much. The proliferation is there just to give you a bonus, but the builds will work without proliferation as well, just not as efficiently until the point that you actually start proliferating them. I also built a build for the crystal silicon over here, and as you can see, that is actually being proliferated, so that's really efficient. There's just not much silicon coming in, so that's a different problem. But again, that is something that will fix itself as soon as we get more resources. The reason for building that crystal silicon is actually because we're now going to be building the most overpowered building in the game, and that is signal towers. You need silicon for that, you also need the power towers for that. So I'm just making those here, and I'm actually splitting off some of those because it's really useful to have those around and just have them in your inventory, especially if you're going to conquer other planets, which we'll be doing in a few minutes. But you know me, I like being efficient, so while we go off to the other planet, I want to make sure I ramp up my production, and typically silicon, as you just saw, is one of the things that you need a lot more of. So as soon as I can, and as soon as I have the Mark III belts up and running quickly enough, what I do is I scale up my starter builds with the larger version, and just copy paste that right over here, just make sure they completely overlap. Click. You will need to Shift Enter to press it down, so force it over the already existing one. If you clean out the belts that are in a horizontal direction compared to everything else, then it should mostly connect up. As you can see, a lot of these belts are actually connecting up. Did I miss any? Sometimes there's a little gap. For example, as you can see, that happens over here. And all you need to do is just connect those up. That's assuming you actually have belts, because apparently I once again ran out. Now, before I go to the other planet and I completely demolish it by showing you the overpoweredness of the missile turrets and the signal towers, I do want to give a shout out to the prototypes as well as the attack drones and pretty much any other ground vessel that you can make. I'm actually not sure if a lot of content creators are even showing these because you kinda don't really need them. However, if the missile towers actually get nerfed at some point, which I expect they might because they're really, really strong, you're going to need these, and these are actually pretty useful and strong, as I will show you in a moment. Okay, so time to gear up for conquering the other planet, the last planet in our system that we haven't actually completely cleared just yet. If you do so, make sure you bring enough fuel, you bring a lot of ammunition, specifically missiles, you're going to need a lot of them. Bring some missile towers as well, bring some signal towers, make sure you have some form of power that will work on the planet that you're going to. So in my case, I'm bringing a lot of solar panels. And other than that, you can bring pretty much whatever you want. I recommend bringing some of these attack drones as well. Remember, you can put them in your hangar, so you don't actually have to carry them around your inventory. And also make sure that you give yourself some ammunition, because, well, you pack a fair punch. Landing safely on the other planet is actually not entirely trivial, so you might want to slow down a moment and see how you're coming in. Yeah, I definitely don't want to land there, because that's exactly where the enemy is. So just a little bit off to the side, and I'm good to go. Then the first thing you want to do is set up your power. Now remember, you can just press Ctrl-C, select whatever power you have already built by hand, and then copy paste that, and pretty much just go around the planet. If there's anything in the way, just Shift Enter, that's what I meant. And you can just copy paste them and keep going And you will have to fill in these gaps somehow, for example with a power pole or something like that. But making a ring around the planet, assuming that there's no enemies in the way, but I don't think there is, nope. It's just a really convenient way to make sure you have some power for your warfare. And now it's time to show you how easy you can win this game if you know what you're doing. So I've made this little blueprint with a couple of missile batteries, a box.
You built a signal tower.
Yes, I know. The box is supposed to fill a little bit of ammo, just a couple of stacks will typically do. And the signal tower is there to make sure that the range of these turrets is actually increased. The way it increases is actually that it will allow these turrets to shoot anywhere that is in the range of any signal tower on the planet. If that doesn't make sense to you, I'll show you in a moment. Let me build a couple of more of these. Okay, so I have about 4 of these setups now, all armed and ready to go. As you can see, we're consuming a bit of power now, so we will be attacked if we don't act fast. Not that that's really a problem, but yeah, there will be an attack. And then all we need to do is pick another of these signal towers, put it close to the enemy base. As you can see, it also functions as a power tower, so it actually connects itself to the power. Just place it down. And there we go. I mean, this is not even fair, but still. It will completely demolish the enemy base. And there we go. Not quite done yet. As you can see, I can actually take a punch myself now as well. I upgraded the shield a little bit. And staying in range of a signal tower actually helps with that, because the signal tower actually charges you as well. As you can see, my power is now going up. So this building does so many things. It lets your missiles go anywhere on the planet. It charges you. It connects power. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking, but it's really, really useful. And there we go, first base cleared. Now, of course, you can do that a few more times, and then you have the entire planet cleared. However, as I just pointed out, I actually brought some of these attack drones as well. Now, the way you actually use them is you need to assign them to a fleet, as counterintuitive as that is, because they're not actually flying through space. You can set them to a type, so for example, in my case, the attack drones. This is not upgraded at all, so you start out with 4 available units. You can upgrade this a lot more, by the way, so this becomes really, really cool, really, really fast in the late game. Actually already in the early game, I just haven't researched anything yet. I'm just using the basic variants to show you how powerful even the most basic version of these already are. So, we just go a little bit closer to the base. We're shooting rockets ourselves, and these things are shooting at the enemy quite effectively. Now, they will get themselves killed, but if you bring a lot more, they will be automatically replenishing themselves. And as you can see, I'm pretty much soloing this base at this point. Just using the normal missiles, the second level of the drones, nothing upgraded just yet, so you can actually increase the damage, the health, and the amount of drones that you can carry. So there's a lot of ways to even improve upon this. But as you can see, it's not really needed. I'm just standing here, I'm tanking some damage, it's not really an issue either, and I'm almost through the entire army over here. No missiles needed. Long story short, don't sleep on these units, because they're really fun to use. You don't need to set up all these missile launchers if you don't want to. Now, as a lot of you have already pointed out in the comments, you can just bury these things, but you can also build geothermal power plants on top of them. Those are these buildings that I haven't actually constructed yet, so that's one of the reason I'm not doing this. But if you do build a geothermal power station on top of this, you actually get about 15 megawatts of power. It says so in the description here as well. They will can be buried with enormous quantities of sand piles, but maybe Cosmo wouldn't mind if we just use the lava's heat. So similar like the lava that you have on this planet as well, where you can use these geothermal power stations, you can actually build one of those on top of here. And the relay station will still leave, so you don't have any new enemies spawning. However, if at any point that geothermal power station is destroyed for whatever reason, the enemy will be back. So keep that in mind, and that's also the reason I don't like doing that. But it's completely viable and completely fair if you put a geothermal power station on top of these things. So, you know, I thought I was actually done with clearing the planet, but after I was setting up some resources, I actually found out that there was a new base here. It's really helpful that you can actually see that there's a new base without having to kind of scour the planet for it. But keep in mind that the enemy will be trying to repopulate on your new planets, so you might want to leave your rocket launchers intact and maybe place down some of these sentry towers, signal towers I should say, around your main production facilities, just in case the enemy decides to pay you a visit while you're off planet. And there you have it. We upgraded the base quite a bit with a lot of production, a lot of resources from the third planet as well. I'm actually still working on everything that has to do with yellow, blue and red research. I'm not even close to done, I believe. Well, maybe I am. Looks like I'm getting there at least. But there's so much stuff to research now that you don't actually have to rush anything, because you just need to work through so many research anyway that it's going to take a while. And of course you can ramp up your production and get that done faster, which is perfectly viable and reasonable. I'm just saying that you can still play this game pretty relaxed even with all the combat involved. As you can see, I had no problems taking out the enemy, even on the default settings. I didn't lower anything, I'm just playing on the normal default combat settings. It's quite a nice challenge. It adds new kind of perspective to the game that wasn't there before. It adds a lot of new resources and new things to build in the game as well. But at the same time, it's still the same game. You can still basically just expand your factory and have fun with that as well. Now in the next episode, what I want to do is focus on some interstellar combat. So make sure you join for that as well. If you're still here, you're awesome. And I do hope to catch you in the next one.